Lekut Chelek Chaf Yud Tes Kislev Sicha Beis Lili Nishmas Rabbi Yosef Binyamin Ben Reb Menashe Kaltman. We are also learning l'schus our dear friend Yosef Shleima Ben Risha for a refuah Shleima Ukreva. Yud Tes Kislev, of course, is the Rosh Hashanah LaChasidus. It is the day that the Alter Rebbe was released from prison, and today we're going to learn about the spiritual significance of Yud Tes Kislev, specifically as it relates to the number 3, which represents the harmony, the fusion of Elyon and Tachtin, of the spiritual and the physical, and what was ultimately accomplished for us on the day of Yud Tes Kislev. The Geula von Alten Rebbe by Yud Tes Kislev is given b'yom hashlishi b'shavua. The Alter Rebbe's release from jail was on the 3rd day of the week, on Tuesday. As the Alter Rebbe writes in his well-known letter, which is also printed in Hayom Yom, as in Yom Shehuchal by Ki Tov, that on the day that Ki Tov was said twice, referring to the day of Tuesday, where in Parshas Bereshis, the Eibishter says Ki Tov, that it is good, twice with regards to the creation that was done on that day, which was Yud Tes Kislev, the 19th day of the month of Kislev. And the Alter Rebbe continues in the letter, Ukeshekarisi b'Sefer Tehillim, the pasuk Padav Shalom Nafshi, when I read in Tehillim, the pasuk Padav Shalom Nafshi, I was redeemed in peace, which is actually in Kapitel Nun Hey, that's part of the Yom Shlishi, the 3rd portion of Tehillim, as it is divided into the 7 days of the week. Yatsasi b'Shalom, I went out in peace. Since the Alter Rebbe emphasizes that his Geula was on the 3rd day of the week, which is the day that Ki Tov was said twice, is verstandig bepashtus. It's understood simply as the Teichen from the Geula Yud Tes Kislev, that the theme of the release, of the redemption of Yud Tes Kislev, hatashayches zum Teichen von Yom Shlishi b'Shavua, is connected to the theme of the 3rd day of the week. In other words, the fact that the Alter Rebbe specifies and emphasizes which day of the week it was, must be that it's connected spiritually to the Geula and what the Geula represents. So to explain this in short, as is Yodua, as Yafutzu Ma'anesecha Chutza, that this concept of spreading, of disseminating the wellsprings of Chassidus into the outside world, which is Hafatzas Teres Chassidus, the idea of teaching and spreading and disseminating the teachings of Chassidus, began primarily after the Alter Rebbe's release from prison, which was in the city of Peterburg. Which means that after Yud Tes Kislev is when the teachings of Chassidus began to reach the world in earnest. And the Rebbe is going to now make a comparison between Yud Tes Kislev, which is the beginning of the dissemination of the teachings of Chassidus, and Matan Torah, which is the beginning of the dissemination of Torah into the world. Underfar, Kishem wie mir gefindt bei Matan Torah bechlal, as is verbunden mit dem Mispir von Shalish, as we find with regards to Torah, that it is connected with the number 3. For example, we say Torah is made up of 3 parts, Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim, given to a people that is made up of 3 segments, Koyanim, Levim, and Yisraelim, ubifrat b'negel izman, and specifically with regards to the timing of the giving of the Torah. That Matan Torah is given b'yomat lisai, b'yarchat lisai. It was on the 3rd day of the 3 days of preparation for Matan Torah, and it was in the 3rd month, which is the month of Sivan, which is the 3rd month, starting from the month of Nisan. Similarly, we find with regards to the revelation of the inner part, the deeper parts of Torah, which happened on Yud Tes Kislev, as is Aleph in Chedesh Kislev, versus the Yarchat Lisaf and Tchilas Hashanah, the number 1. It took place in the 3rd month, if you're starting from Tishrei Cheshvan Kislev, and Beis B'Yemet Lisa, B'Yem Hashlishi B'Shavua, it was on the 3rd day, meaning the 3rd day of the week. So let's explain this. What's taka the connection between Torah and number 3? So as we know, the Uftu from Matan Torah is one of the uniquenesses, or the uniqueness of Matan Torah is, was demot is batel givaron the gzeida from the yedim the tachtenim that it was on the day of Matan Torah that was the end of the gzeida, of the decree that had been applicable previously, that the above cannot go down into the below, and the below cannot ascend to the above. as a sich aufgetan der Chibur von Elyon Metachten, it was on that day that the fusion of the above and the below took place. So the uftu, the accomplishment of Matan Torah, was the fact that on that day there became a harmony between the above and the below that until that day was not possible. And this is seen, this is alluded to in the number 3. Why? Because when you say this is the first, that is the number 1, it represents that there is only one thing. There's no conflict. There's only one thing. There's nothing to make peace with. Sheni, when you say this is the second day, the second thing, number 2, Vaistav Pirud, shows on separation or even conflict. It's 2 separate entities. Similar to Matan Torah, before Matan Torah, where there was 2 separate entities. There was the above and the below, and they were a conflict with each other. They could not merge with one another. The number 3 represents the fusion of the 2 of them. In other words, when you have one, you can't have peace because there's nothing to be at peace with. When you have 2, what you're seeing is the fact that they're both different than each other, and that is not resolved until the number 3 that overpowers the 2 of them and fuses them together. So this concept of the fusion of Elyon V'Tachten, which is the peace between 2 conflicting entities, is represented in the number 3. And since Matan Torah is the fusion of Elyon V'Tachten, of the above and the below, therefore it's represented in the number 3, which represents this peace between the 2 separate entities. But the far is Torah in Yana Shalom, and this explains why Torah is the idea of peace. Number 1, that the entire Torah was given for the purpose of creating peace in the world. And we find that Torah is called Shalom, Torah Shalom. It is a Torah of peace. Now it makes sense. The whole idea of Shalom, of making peace, is by bringing together, by combining 2 opposite entities, and that's what happened on Matan Torah. Matan Torah created Shalom in the world between the Elyon and the Tachten. So now let's apply this to the Sefer HaTanya. To the spreading of Chassidus that began primarily on Yud Tes Kislev. Al derech zeh is eich b'negei legili v'avatz Chassidus. The same thing is with regards to the revelation and dissemination of the teachings of Chassidus. And we're going to say that the Mayanos, the well springs, which is the teachings of Chassidus, represents Elyon, and the Chutza, the outside world that is supposed to be, where the well springs are supposed to reach, represents Tachten. Before the redemption of the Alter Rebbe in Yud Tes Kislev, the well springs did not reach all the way till Chutza, to the outside world. And the Rebbe explains this on 2 levels. Number 1, within the person himself, for the Torah to reach the chutza of the person, the external elements of the person, but does it unable to sign seichel, which begins with seichel. In other words, you have what's on the inside of the person, inherently connected to the person, but then it has to express itself first intellectually, and then emotionally, and then practically. But before Yud Tes Kislev, Chassidus was an idea that might have been connected to the essence of the person, but it hadn't yet been brought down properly into the faculties of intellect and emotion, etc. And also on a literal level. Learn to teach Torah, the Pnimis Torah, in an open way, and to disseminate it to every element, to every part of the world, bis and device to Erta to the furthest reach. This didn't happen. Chassidus didn't reach the externalities of the person, and Chassidus didn't reach the outside world. Und die Geula von Yud Tes Kislev hat aufgetan dem Yefutzu von der Chutza, and the Geula of Yud Tes Kislev accomplished that these Ma'ayanes, these well springs, should go all the way into Chutza. Bedugmas Chibur Elyon and Tachten from Matan Torah, similar to the fusion of Elyon and Tachten, of the above and below, that happened in Matan Torah. And just like we said by the Torah, that Torah is called Shalom, and it's defined by Shalom because it made peace between Elyon and Tachten. We also find that Yud Tes Kislev is connected to Shalom because it made peace between the Ma'ayanis and the Chutza, so to speak. Das ist der Tam, and this is the reason, or one of the reasons at least, that the Alter Rebbe connects his redemption with the saying, the pasuk Padav Shalom Nafshi, my soul was was redeemed in peace. Because that's the idea of Shalom, to make peace between these two entities of Elyon and Tachton, or in this context of the Mayonis and the Chutzah. So this explains the connection between Yud Tes Kislev and the number 3, because the idea of 3 represents the shalom between two entities, and Yud Tes Kislev began a new phase in the shalom between Mayonis and the Chutzah, that the Mayonis of Chassidus, the wellsprings of Chassidus, should actually reach into the outside world and into the outside elements of the person, and therefore it's connected with the number 3, and therefore it's connected with shalom, which is the idea of 3. In Sif Gimel and Dalid, the Rebbe is going to talk about the fact that the Alter Rebbe doesn't just say it was connected with the number 3, Yom HaShlishi, but he refers to it or alludes to it by saying Yom Shehuchba by Ki Tov, the day that Ki Tov was said twice. And this will also explain to us the connection between Yud Tes Kislev and the fact that it was the day, it happened on the day that Ki Tov was said twice. But the Alter Rebbe is medayik b'michtove, as the Alter Rebbe specifies in his letter, as ein Geula is given nitztam b'yom shlishi b'shavua, that his redemption was not just on a Tuesday, on the 3rd day of the week, not in dem Tag was huchba by Ki Tov, the day that Ki Tov was said twice. So the Rebbe explains, the fact that Ki Tov is said twice represents a double amount, a double portion of good. Where do we see this concept of double portion of good? Similar to what the Gemara says in Kiddushin, Tov l'shamayim v'tov l'briyos, where it's good both for heaven, for the spiritual world, and Tov l'briyos, good for the creations of this world. But there Tov kafel is an inyan from chibur elyon v'tachtin, which this double good is another embodiment of the fusion of above and below. The Tov is b'chibur u'b'yachal l'shamayim l'briyos, the good is serving both heaven and the creations of the earth. So again, there is a fusion, there's a combination, a merge of the Elyon and the Tachton. When the Tev Kafel is Mudgis from Yuchad and Teres Achsidus, and this double good, the fact that the good, it's Tev Lashamayim and also Labrius, is actually emphasized in the teachings of Chassidus. Where we see that Chassidus requires or demands from a person both extremes. As the Aveda ben Adam Lamakim is all Zayin B'Tachas Aliyah Shamayim. On the one hand, Chassidus gives the person the ability, Pnimiyas HaTorah, gives the person the ability that when he serves Hashem, it should be on the highest level. Shamayim, on a heavenly level. Which it could be done when it's permeated with the wellsprings of Torah, the teachings of Chassidus. On the other hand, Chassidus demands of the person to love his fellow Jew, even someone that is on the lowest rung of society. As the Alter Rebbe explains in the 32nd chapter of Tanya, which is known as the heart of Tanya, that even someone that has no quality to himself, other than the fact that he was created by Hashem, which is why we call him Brios, a creature or a creation, even that person needs to be loved with Avos Yisrael. So we see where the Torah, where Chassidus is Tov l'Shamayim, it is lifting the person up to Shamayim, but at the same time it's requiring the person not to go off to take care of himself and forget about the other people, but Tov l'Brios, it should also share that goodness with the people that are on the very low end of society. So we see that this concept of number 3 and this concept of Shalom, which is the merge between Elyon and Tachton, is seen also in the idea of Huchel B'Ki Tov, and specifically in the teachings of Chassidus that serve both to lift the person to Shamayim as well as to help them interact with Brios. In Sifdal, the Rebbe brings another idea in Tev L'Shmaim and Tev L'Brios, as Chassidus caters to the Shamayim and to the Brios. And in this case, not only do we have to love the Brios, but actually Chassidus gives the Brios a roadmap to their own personal growth. The Aveda from Chassidus is Azavos is Shayach. The Yisaydim is Evas Nem Tarum Ala Yidin. Chassidus is applicable, and it embraces every Yid. Whether those that are on the level of Shamayim, on a very lofty level, and those that are on a lower level. And the Rebbe explains, the Alter Rebbe is madgish gleich in dem Sharblatt von Sefer Tanya. The Alter Rebbe emphasizes on the very first page, on the cover page of Tanya, as karev elecha hadavar ma'od beficho v'vav chalasese, that this Torah is accessible or very accessible to you in your words, in your speech, in your thoughts, and in your actions. As yet, what's the Alter Rebbe say? As yeder idar wissen, every Yid should know. As es is elecha, farim, to him, karev ma'od, very accessible. That in Avodas Hashem, the idea of serving Hashem. Even someone that's on a very low level and might think to himself that this is beyond me. The Alter Rebbe says, no, karev elecha adavar, even to you, this is accessible. As the Alter Rebbe continues on that page, on the cover page of Tanya, and then elaborates in his Sefer Tanya, how this could be carried out in the long, short way. So on the one hand, the Tanya is talking to the simplest of people and telling them how they can, how Chassidus it talks to them. On the other hand, is the Alter Rebbe emphasizes later on in Tanya, Perek Tes Vav, as a feeling that even someone who's already on the level of Shemaim, when the Aved is by him an inyan from the Gilus from Teva, he already has accustomed himself to serve Hashem. It became natural for him. But if he doesn't try to climb higher, he is referred to as someone that does not serve Hashem. And a Yid should constantly be someone that's serving Hashem, which means to say he has to constantly go outside of what he's accustomed to climb ever higher. Under Bible and here the Alter Rebbe clarifies as that even this idea to go higher and higher is also accessible to you. A Yid could think to himself, I'm already on such a lofty level. How could you require from this person to go higher? Says the Alter Rebbe, even for this, the idea that we have reached so high and yet we're demanding of you to go higher, you have the koyach, you have the strength to do even that. Bizas as his card of made for Yid didn't, so much so that it is easily accessible to every single Yid. So we see Toiv LaShamayim and Toiv LaBriyas, how Chassidus offers a roadmap both to the Jew who is on the level of Shamayim as well as to the Jew who is on the level of Briyas. He's a simple Jew, he's even just referred to as a creature, and yet Tanya is teaching, Chassidus is teaching how karev elecha hadavar, even to that Yid, it is easily accessible to grow in his Avodas Hashem. So this last two seifim connected the idea of Shalom and Chibur Elin B'Tachten and Yafutzu Ma'nesecha Chutza with the idea of Huchba B'Kitoiv, Toiv LaShamayim, and Toiv LaBriyas. In Sif Hey and Vav, the Rebbe is now going to connect this idea of this harmony, this fusion of Elyon and Tachton with the Tanya specifically. It's if Gimel and Dad who's talking about Chassidus in general, the teachings of Chassidus, they elevate they talk about Avos Yisrael and they talk about elevating the Briyos. But in Sifhei and Vav, the Rebbe is going to focus on Sefer HaTanya specifically. Leighton Beer the Omer in the Muftu. Al Kapanim Einer from the Yud Tes Kislev from Yud Tes Kislev. According to this spoken explanation, in the accomplishment or one of the accomplishments of Yud Tes Kislev, that it brought the harmony of Ma'nesecha Chutza. The Merech verstehen der Kesher zwischen der Geula von Yud Tes Kislev and Sefer Tanya will also explain the connection between Yud Tes Kislev and Tanya. As we see in this next paragraph, the Rebbe shows where we see this connection. Kiyodua, as the Nun Gimel Yem was the Alter Rebbe is given by Meiser, then it connected the Nun Gimel Prakim von Tanya, as it is known that the 53 days that the Alter Rebbe was in jail correspond to the 53 Prakim of Tanya. Und die Geula von Yud Tes Kislev is given in Schus von die 2 Jahre Chayes Beteire Vavede was the Tanya at Meisik and Zwischen Chassidim. And it is said that the Geula, the redemption of the Alter Rebbe, came in the merit of 2 years of extra passion and vitality in serving Hashem and in learning Torah that was brought about because of the Tanya. Was the father the Alter Rebbe gave the Tanya, which is why the Alter Rebbe wanted the Tanya to be printed right away, even before Yud Tes Kislev, because the learning of the Tanya and the increased chayas in serving Hashem and learning Torah that it brought about was actually gave the Alter Rebbe the schus and the merits they needed to be released from jail. So we now have to explain what's the connection of Yud Tes Kislev and Tanya. Varum. As the Atfasa from the Sefer is given mitzvah Yar Kedem, they're Gula from Yud Tes Kislev, even though the printing of Tanya, the first final printing of Tanya was 2 years before the Geula of Yud Tes Kislev. The Tanya, Tzachag Geduk B'Shnas Tavkuf Nun Zayin, und the Geula is given B'Shnas Tavkuf Nun Tes. The Tanya was printed in the year 1796. The Alter Rebbe's release from jail was in the year 1798, so the Tanya was really printed first. Is over the Chidush from Sefer Tanya. Nevertheless, the novelty, the uniqueness of Tanya, the Gabi under the Drush Chassidus Shalei in comparison to the other teachings of Chassidus from the Alter Rebbe, verbunden mit den Uftum Yud Tes Kislev, is connected with Yud Tes Kislev. In other words, besides the fact that the Tanya helped the Alter Rebbe get out of jail, but there is an inherent thematic connection between the Tanya and Yud Tes Kislev. Even though the Tanya was already printed, nevertheless, there's something that connects the two of them. I will explain this according to the saying of our Rebbes, as the Tanya is their Torah shebiksav, so Torah Chassidus. The Tanya is the written Torah of Chassidus. Just like in Torah, there's Torah shebiksav and Torah shebal peh. There's the written Torah, there's the oral Torah. Similarly, in Chassidus itself, there is the Tanya, which is on the level of the Torah shebiksav, the written Torah of Chassidus. We understand the Pashtus, and we understand very obviously, is the Torah shebiksav Torah Chassidus. The fact that we call it the written Torah, afin Sefer Tanya, nit nur der Farmat Alter Rebbe Talim Alein geschrieben, is not just because the Alter Rebbe actually wrote it. Nit wie die Drush Chassidus Shalei was gesagt bal peh. Unlike the other Mamarim that were said, that were spoken, und sie seine verschrieben geworden durch seine Talmidim, and were documented by the students or the Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe, the Teres from Magid of Baal Shem Tov, similar to the teachings of the Magid of the Baal Shem Tov, that were documented by their disciples and not by them themselves, not by the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid. They did not write their Torah, but by the Alter Rebbe. There was the other drushim that he said, and the Chassidim wrote it, but the Tanya, he himself wrote it, but that is not a sufficient reason to call it Torah shebiksav. Nor val der Yachas von Sefer Tanya to Shar Torah Chassidus, the reason we call Tanya Torah shebiksav is because the relationship or the comparison between Tanya and the rest of Chassidus is bedugmas hayachas from Torah shebiksav to Torah shebal peh, similar to the comparison between Torah shebiksav and Torah shebal peh, Kidul Lekaman, as we'll explain in Sivav. The Chelek from Torah shebal peh and Torah shebiksav, the difference between the written Torah and the oral Torah, and a difference that actually is halachically relevant into how they are learned, is as follows. After L'Yoda my Karma b'Torah shebiksav. In Torah shebiksav, it doesn't matter if you understand what you're saying, but you're yotzeh the mitzvah of learning by just saying the words, and you can make a bracha, a bracha al divrei seira for saying the words of Torah shebiksav, even if you don't understand it. Whereas dafka k'shemevin b'Torah shebal peh, but Torah shebal peh you have to understand what's being said in order for it to be considered learning Torah, and in order to make a bracha on it. And the Rebbe explains, in Torah shebal peh you can get the Yavana Vasage from them. Inyan anilmud. Well, by Torah shebiksav, what's primarily relevant is the comprehension of what's being learned. So but the words and the letters are not so important. Mashakin in Torah shebiksav, yet der ois muss geschrieben werden bediuk. When it comes to Torah shebiksav, every letter must be written precisely. Und der Rike dabei is the kriyas esis, and the primary form of learning Torah shebiksav is by reading the words. And the Rebbe is going to explain that the writing of the words represents tachton as it comes down into the material world, whereas the topic, the idea, is elyon. It's the topic that's being learned is the lofty concept. The writing of it is as it's being brought down into the physical world. And the Rebbe will explain that, but before that, the Rebbe adds this idea that this is why it had to wait until Matan Torah. And because of this concept that Torah shebiksav is bringing the ideas, the lofty ideas of Torah into the written word, is had to wait until Matan Torah. Even though the idea of learning Torah took place even before Matan Torah, as The Gemara says, that from the days of the Avos, we never stopped learning. And not only did they learn it, they even documented it in writing. The Rambam says that the Alter Rebbe wrote Sfarim books. But das also didn't happen get from Teres Biksav, but even that was not in the category of Teres Biksav. Das Teres Biksav can happen only because of Matan Torah, and therefore only after Matan Torah. Why? Because before Matan Torah there was this decree that separated between heaven and earth. The same thing applied to Torah itself. As there was the spiritual element of Torah, the idea, the concepts. But that lofty concept could not be brought down into the below, into writing it down, as overin achefetz dikdusha, which will then the book, the sefer in which it is written into, will become a holy object. You couldn't fuse the two. You couldn't take this lofty idea of Torah and put it into a book, put it into a sefer, into writing, into pages. Tafkin noch dem, wenn es bottle given the gzeira, only after the gzeira, this decree, the separation, came to an end, where it became possible for the above to go down into the below, then Torah came down into the world of action, the world of deed. Torah shebiksav, written Torah. When is a naked chayfetz. When he holds onto the Torah, because it has divine writing in it, he's holding a holy object. It's a physical object, but it's holy. When it says and it's not a descent for Torah. You're not saying, oh, you're taking this holy Torah and you're making it into a printed or a written sefer. No. The Torah is in Ma'aseh Ksav. As Torah comes down into the world of deed, into the written world, it is still a divine writing, which is the fusion of above and below. So what happens is, what's the uftu of Torah shebiksav? Not just that it's written. The ufta of Torah shebiksav is that you're taking the loftiest ideas of Torah and you're bringing it down into the most physical form, which is the ultimate fusion of Elyon and Tachton. And that's why, when it comes to learning Torah, you have to read the words, because it is those words that carry in them the loftiest teachings of Torah as they are being brought down into ksav, into the physical form of writing. In Sefer HaTanya. And the same thing we're going to see in the Sefer of Tanya. Alter Rebbe wrote it in a way that every single letter was precise. Totally precise. As the Friedrich Rebbe related. As the Alter Rebbe had geschrieben dem Tanya, that it took the Alter Rebbe 20 years to write the Tanya. The Gourarie, the Diak, b'chol teva v'teva. And he specified adding or taking away within each word. Ad asher tzerfoi v'zikikoi b'chaser v'yatir. Until he refined it and he purified it, that every single word should have either the extra letter that it needs or take out the additional letter that's not needed. As we know, even the chulu and the vichulu is precise. B'shas gegeben dem Tanya in Tfus, when he gave the Tanya to be printed, sich stark gebeten by Matvis, he begged of the printer, how careful he should be with the extra letters and the letters that did not need to be there. Which this concept to vest these loftiest teachings of Pnimiyas HaTorah into the written words and written letters is ein zach mit ninyan agul from Yud Tes Kislev, is the same idea as the gul of Yud Tes Kislev, which accomplished to take the well springs into the outside world, as the mayonish that the well springs of Torah should go down should be disseminated into the furthest corners of the world. Similarly, the Alter Rebbe was taking these holiest, most divine ideas of Chassidus and putting them down into words, into literal words that can be printed on a paper. And there's one more, it's not a whole nuah, but there's another comparison here between Torah Shebiksav and Tanya as the Torah Shebiksav of Chassidus. Punkt, wie das ist, wenn ich jetzt Torah Shebiksav. As nicht nur was in ihres Kol ganz Torah Shebal Leka midi delene mizi beiraisa. Was ist später in its Gala geworden? Just like with Torah Shebiksav, that everything is included within it. As we know that it says in the Zohar, there's nothing that you cannot find an allusion for it in Torah, which would refer to everything that was revealed after Matan Torah. So not only is everything that came after Matan Torah included in Torah Shebiksav, but even those ideas that were learned, let's say by the Avos, for example, that were learned by the Avos before Matan Torah, are also included in Torah Shebiksav, because there's nothing that's not in Torah. The same thing we're going to say with regards to the Sefer of Tanya, as in that it includes all of the ideas of Chassidus, even those ideas that were already revealed prior to the Sefer to the writing of Tanya, which you would therefore think there's no reason for the Alter Rebbe to put it in Tanya because he already brought it into the world. But no, the Tanya is the nucleus of Teres Chassidus. It includes every aspect of Chassidus, and therefore even those ideas that were already taught by the Alter Rebbe would still be included in the Tanya. The Rebbe takes it another step. Since the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid did not document their own teachings, it was conveyed in a matter of orally, and then it was only documented by their students. And we know that way teaching Chassidus Chabad meaning intellect. The Alter Rebbe was taking these ideas of Chassidus and bringing it into the level of comprehension, even Chassidus HaKlolos, even the general Chassidus, which was the Chassidus as it was revealed by the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid. The Alter Rebbe took those ideas and brought them into the realm of comprehension for the person. Which began with Tanya, which began to teach these lofty ideas to the comprehension level of a regular person. This would mean, as in Sefer Tanya Gebrach Biksav, that in the Tanya it includes in writing, as we said before, in the most practical form, even the loftiest ideas of Chassidus HaKlolis, even they are found in Tanya. So the Alter Rebbe, connected Tanya with Yud Tes Kislev, that just like Yud Tes Kislev is Yafutzu Ma'inisecha Chutza, the Chibur of Elyon V'Tachtein, so too in the writing of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe took the loftiest ideas of Pnimiyus HaTorah and brought them down Biksav in writing, which is the Chibur of Elyon V'Tachtein, and not only anything new, but that would be revealed from this point on. But even the ideas of Chassidus and even Chassidus HaKlolis from the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid, everything is included in Tanya. So you're taking the highest ideas of Tanya, of Pnimiyus HaTorah, and you're bringing it down Biksav, and this is accessible through the Sefer HaTanya. From Kol understanding from all of this, it becomes clearly understood the importance and the greatness of learning the Sefer of Tanya, which is the written Torah of the teachings of Chassidus. Because through learning Tanya in general, and learning Tanya specifically, and learning Chassidus in general, we will merit speedily to learn the Torah of Mashiach, was in your name Pnimiyus HaTorah, which what Mashiach is going to teach will be the hidden secrets of the Torah. Rashi, as Rashi says in Shir HaShirim, the secrets of its reasons and its hidden ideas, which we will learn and hear directly from Mashiach, in order 30, with regards to the idea that Tanya includes even teachings of Chassidus HaKlolis from the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid, the Rebbe references a Sikha from the Frierdiker Rebbe, Shabbos Parshas Tisa, in the year Tifrach. And he says, the Gilui Baal Shem Tov Rav Maggid, the revelations that were brought about by the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid were a preparation to the revelation of the essence of Pnimius HaTorah, which was going to be revealed by the Alter Rebbe. B'dugmas Avedas HaAvos, similar to the Aveda of the Avos, which were ha'achana, even though in the way you could say it's higher because it's the Aveda of the Avos, but it served as a ha'achana, as a preparation to the revelation of Atzmas that would take place in Matan Torah. So again, you see this comparison that Tanya, Yud Tes Kislev and Tanya is like Matan Torah, and Tanya is like the Torah Shabbat that takes everything that was done before it, and as well as everything that was going to be brought after it, and it encapsulates all of it in this Sefer, whether Torah Shabbat for Matan Torah or Tanya with regards to Yud Tes Kislev, and therefore we understand that the whole idea of Chassidus and the whole idea of Yud Tes Kislev and the whole idea of Tanya is connected to the number 3 with the idea of Shalom, the Chibur Elni V'Tachtein, and therefore it is so important to learn Tanya and to learn Chassidus, and that will bring the ultimate Geula, where we will be able to learn Teiraseh Shel Mashiach B'mheirav Yameinu Mamish.